and I'm probably a millimeter or two ahead of this number, but the number I'm going to give you is 1130. That's 5 millimeters further forward than the standard guys in the plan. So let's check this.
What range is that in, Jess?
What's that?
Is that for most any type of wind condition, or you?
I don't change it. I don't change it for wind condition. I may change the twist, and I may change my sheeting angle, but I don't change my mast rig. That's something I don't mess with a lot. Now, if I find that the rig is getting loose because of the wind or something and slip, the backstay I generally don't touch, and it doesn't seem to slip. It's really hard for me to move my backstay, so I consider that to be fixed. So then I assume that the headstay slips, so I tighten the headstay, because that's the one that gets shooken to death and all that. It's the most likely culprit when you talk about slippage and the mast rig changing. So if I see that my headstay has come slack and is fluttering as you go upwind in that, the headstay is, I would pull the mast forward, not back. Now, I have had my mast as far forward as 126 or 1126. I'm not so sure that that's ideal, but I think a really good all-around number is about 5 millimeters forward of the stock, which is at 1130.
Where exactly are you measuring from?
We put that right at the intersection of the rubber and the hull,
Okay.
and we put this on
the hole.
On the hole, and I look at the hole. He's actually measured here at 1133, so I'm going to tighten it up just a little bit. Try to get me.
Oops. That's a John Rogers measurement.
Okay, that's 11. This is set at 1130 now, right? So one thing I was talking about, and a lot of guys have this issue, is and there are guys that write articles out there that talk about the headstay should only be as tight as just to prevent fluttering. And I see guys going to weather and their headstay is literally moving around. I don't subscribe to that, because that's really distorting. If it does move around, distorts the whole flow of the jib and so on. So I probably myself, and I'm very beatable. I don't think I'm unbeatable. There's a lot of guys way faster than me. I'm just telling you the things that I do and the things that I watch for. And I think that's what's the general is, if you get the boat close, the boat is very forgiving, and that's all you have to be is close. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it has to be pretty close. It can't be pretty far off. It's got to be pretty close. So when we look, and I'm going to turn it this way so the guys that are on this side might have a little bit of a deficit. I can turn it around for you. But the jib generally gets set on the knuckle, the upper inner knuckle of the chine that's right here at the deck edge. And so what happens a lot is guys get just in here and they say, well, that's the deck edge, but it's the outer edge. And we're looking more like the topping lift lining up with that edge, right? Not the outside of the boom or the inside of the boom, but the topping lift, which would be the center of the boom, lining up with that edge.
So Jess, not everybody's eye is the same.
Yes.
So when I first started out, I used to look here. And then Dennis taught me that if I put it in one of those stands where it's canted and you sight down the mast, that you get a better view of where it ought to be. And actually, if you look at it from behind, from the stern, it actually looks like it's a little further outboard.
Like that?
So how do you do it? What I found is the way Dennis does it really works well for me.
I do it Dennis's way. I lean the boat over, and that, because it's the weight of the sail and that
Right.
that's in it that allows it to sit there.
Right.
You tune the IOMs, you tune Odoms, you tune most boats that I have. I tune in that same manner.
Okay.
I'm talking about the lineup here,
Right.
so guys got an idea where to start. But yes,
Right.
to
It's
lay
the
the
same
boat
thing
over on
with
its
the main
side,
boom. Okay.
you can check a multitude of things,
Yeah.
right? You get to check your mast bend, you get to check your boom positions, you get to check your sail drafts, right? Because the weight of the sails, gravity's working for you. Here, gravity doesn't really work for you. It's whatever puff is in it. And if we take the puff out of it, then it just doesn't hang right.
And that's the idea. Whatever you use for setup, always have the boat in the same position, whether it's bolt upright with no wind or whether you've got it on its side. Just make sure you're looking at it consistently because it will change.
So the other thing that follows up with that is once we do this whole static setup here, right? And we do the static tuning, you put it on the water. And you get behind the boat, or at least I do. I get behind the boat and I look at boom positions from the boat as it's sailing away. I look at sail trim positions, twist, and I look at all of those things and I feel the boat and how it responds. I look for my jibs to lead in this area here for the break. Now, for those of you that have sailed big boats, dinghies, anything, you talk about the break of the jib being even. Model boats, I don't find that to be as correct because there's not as much easing that you know, because you can ease the sheets. You always hear the guys ease it out, and you hear the guys starking on the winch, bap, 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 and then back in. Right? They're always playing it. We can't do that, so I have the sails lead here. That doesn't mean excessively, just so that when it breaks, this is where it starts, and then it goes down the sail this way. You don't want it to break and start here and go up the sail this way. That
Same
would
with the
mean that
mast?
your leech is too
Same with the
tight.
main?
No, not the same with the main.
Okay.
The main has a lot of other different factors involved, as far as the backwind from the jib, the way it drafts on the mast, and so on.
You were suggesting that telltale be a little higher, right?
I also these telltales, you want to make sure that when you put them on, and not that these are badly done or anything, but this one could maybe be a little bit higher and quite a bit shorter. But you want to make sure that you get them up high enough, and I generally go just below center in the sail, right? And that's also because spray, get your telltales wet, your telltales get stuck to the sail, you might as well sail without them. So if you put them up a little higher, they stay out of the spray and they don't get stuck quite as readily, and you might get to use them a little longer. Now, when the wind comes up, you get more spray, telltales are going to get wet, you have to learn to sail without them. But generally the wind is up by that time enough to where you can sail without them, So then we're going to take a quick look at what's set up here, right? And if we look at the main, the leech of the main, we look at that, that's pretty tight. For all those that are looking at it, that's pretty tight. You guys downwind are hard to see. These guys over here really have the best seat.
Yeah, especially with
Yeah,
pressure
you pull
in
the
it.
mast forward.
We pulled the mast forward, which
Thank
tightened
you.
it. So what does that tell you? That for every action, equal and opposite reaction, right?
Little
So
more
if you
twist.
come along and you go, oh, I think I'll tighten my headstay. Wait a minute, that comes along with loosening the vang to adjust for the twist, right? Or if you do the exact opposite, right, and loosen your headstay, maybe that means tightening the vang. And this is the example, right? So everything comes with a cost. You can't just go and do one and expect that to be the end all, because in most cases there's a two-part thing to that, right? Okay, so and looking at this, I'm going to increase this just a little bit. And I don't have the definitive number. I really don't.
Do you use your battens as a reference?
I do use the battens. I like this one to be just about parallel with the boom,
Yep.
right? And I'm more in that range, because when we get the full wind in it, it's going to fill out just a little bit more, right? If we were to that. So the other thing that guys do is what's called fanning. And see when I fan it into the wind, see how much more twist goes into it? And so that's the hard part. It's sitting here and doing the static tuning and then putting it on the water. And that's why I recommend you put it on the water, you look at it while it's sailing, and make any possible adjustments. Again, bring it in. Do them in really small increments. With the DF95, it's exceptionally important because the threads on the vangs are coarse threads. More movement, small rotation. So I do a lot of stuff in quarter and half turn increments. And I get a lot of adjustment out of that quarter and half turn increments. I don't go and, well, put on a couple of turns. I can tell you right now, no matter what, couple turns on, couple turns off is just probably too many, period. Because once you get close, it's going to be really small. It's going to be a quarter turn, maybe a half a turn, either on or off, to get the desired rig. Now I don't have a number. If Dennis might have a number, John Rogers might have a number. Do you have a number for the leech twist? I don't happen to have one, but I can tell you that looks pretty good to me for my static tune on the stand. Now the jib is a completely different thing. If you look at the jib here,
Ken Reed said 57 backstay to leech edge, second batten, and jib 51.
57. Well, let's find out. Let's find out what this is.
57 to the backstay.
Right.
The 58.
You're off by one.
I'm at about 55, 54. It depends. Pressure, right? Trying not, you know, I can make it 70, you know. But no, just trying to gauge. Like it goes shallow at about 50, 48, and then when it fills in, it's about 55. But that's just an eyeball thing for me, and I realize that eyeball things is not always the same for her. So thank you for bringing forward the dimensions that he talks about.
Hey, can I ask you a question, Jess? Because you were just getting ready to go to the jib, and on the main, you gave us an idea in the relationship of the batten on the main for twist. Do you have the same kind of eyeball thing on the jib that you use in terms of a batten the top?
Well, I actually use the brake as that eyeball. So there again, I'm looking at this area of the sail as leading the luff,
right?
The brake, and that's where I.
So when you say brake, opening up a little bit.
Well, no, when it luffs.
Okay.
If you sail your boat to weather,
yeah,
and you pinch it up ever so slowly, and it has to be pretty slow in some cases, but ever so slowly, when the jib goes to break, like it's starting to break right here, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you want it to break off right here first.
Which it's doing, right?
Which it's doing, but it's doing it excessively because I do believe that this is too open.
Yep.
Right now. So also the other thing to look at is on this jib right here, you'll see almost a deflection in the material right here that creates a hump. Right? So on one side it's a hump and on the other side it's a gully, right? And what that causes that is overstressing of the sail by either the downhaul or the halyard, depending on which. Now on DF95s it's all downhaul. On some other boats like Odoms or IOMs, it may be downhaul, it may be halyard uphaul. But you want to pay attention to that. You don't want this to be really, really flat. One of the reasons you don't want it to be really, really flat is it narrows the driving range for the boat. The groove that you go to try and hit with a really flat leading edge is much narrower than the groove that is slightly bellied or a little bit larger or deeper. So we're going to try and loosen that up.
I like to set mine just tight enough to take the wrinkles out of it. Any tighter.
What about if you have a few wrinkles in the luff there? Does it matter?
No. Most of the wrinkles that'll come out. This one?
That's hard to move.
I got it.
Because it's the knuckle, see that on it's going on that bracket right there.
Okay, so we've loosened that up. You guys might not be able to see it from where you're at, but when I look at it, I now have a light curvature that starts at the headstay and feeds into the sail now, right? And before it was absolutely flat, if not buckled back a little bit from being overly tight. Now part of that is I tightened the halyard, it's fixed up there, I pulled everything tighter. So that part of that was cause of that. But I also looked at the boat earlier, and there was no tension on the head stay, but there was a lot of tension on the halyard. And that's the misnomer that a lot of guys make, is that they use the jib downhaul or the halyard of the jib to get all their tension, and it's the head stay that's gone slack. And so they're just transferring the load onto the thing, and that's when you get that curly, fluttery head stay as well. Okay, so now we'll take a look at the amount of brake. And now what was the number that you said that they gave? 57? 57.
For the jib.
At what point?
Leach to mast, mid sail.
Leach to mast, mid sail. Right here, this is close to 80. So that's about how, you know, when you look at that, you say, well, that's a little bit much. And that's to mast or to topping lift?
To mast.
I think the English number or German number, Australian number is 3.5 jib, mid jib to the topping lift.
To the top.
So topping lift.
35 millimeters?
No, I think it's 45. I get it.
Well, this is, so currently we've changed the angle to represent 60. We're at 60 on the twist on the jib, and that's what that looks like. If we go down to, that's at 35 on the topping lift, like you're suggesting. That's pretty, and that's almost too tight. So then I would take the boat and look it up and see where does it break first. Right? And it's still actually breaking down here a little bit first. Now, some of that could be from wind distortion, because we got me upwind, Keith upwind, Henry upwind, and all that. That's why you put the boat in the water and you sail it out and you look at that and you try to get that right. See, it's still just favoring down here just a little bit, right?
So just the number that the Yacht sheet uses is 50 mid leach to the topping lift, and then tops 60.
50 and 60.
So Jess, you're adjusting
Yeah.
where it's braking by the topping lift?
Yes.
Yes. So the topping lift is essentially for those that sail big boats or have sailed on other boats. When you go to set the jib up, you move the lead. You move the lead forward to get the brake right. You move the lead aft to improve the brake. One pulls the foot tighter, the other one pulls the leach tighter. You move it forward, the leach goes tight. You move it back, the foot goes tight. The topping lift is your lead. And so you're using the lead, either topping lift up or down, right, to move your lead forward and aft on the rail. Does that make,
Yep.
everybody follow that? So the other thing we look at,
So one other question. So if it's braking low first, are you reducing the topping lift, making it not as taut?
no, I'm making it tighter.
Tighter.
So you're
If
opening up the top.
I want to move the lead aft, right? And so, because I want the top to spill off, so I move the lead aft a little bit by tightening the topping lift,
Okay.
right? That puts more twist up high, takes some of the twist out down low, right? And that's the, so the other thing to look at when you sail the boat off, and this doesn't look too bad. The jib is slightly more open than the main, but you can look and see how this is they're pretty close. They're not bad.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say they're perfect. They're not, and I think my jib is a little more open than my main because I just want that flow. This is a masthead rig, and you don't want it too much tighter because then it just starts blowing out this part of the sail, right? So that's one of the reasons why getting it out on the rail. This one's pretty good. That one's pretty good.
So do you want to open it a little bit more or not?
No, I'm going to leave. I think it ought to stay until you've sailed it and we've looked at it on the water. Now, the other thing that I don't have a number for, and I do it by eyeball, and maybe that's a deficit, is how deep to make your main and your jib. Now, this one I think is not real bad, and it's at about 26 millimeters at the deepest part of the foot to the boom, about 26. And the only thing I would say is that I would have the main slightly flatter. Right? You don't want the jib to be 26 and this to be 50. Right? Just for example, the reason being is that the main now just closes the slot, blocks off the flow. Right? You want to keep the slot open. So I would have this, let's say what did I say it was, 25?
26.
I would have this at about 20. You know, just a few millimeters, 5 millimeters less than the jib. Right? If I've got the jib open at 30, then this would be 25. Just slightly flatter. Not
What is it now?
appreciably flatter, but slightly.
What is it now?
The jib itself now, about 25, 26, and this is about 25, 26. They're about the same. So I'm gonna do this just a little bit. I'm gonna pull that into about 20. So now that's basically sail setup, right? We have the main angle should be this corner. I often find myself sailing a couple of clicks out, but I put the main at this corner here, not this corner back here or this corner out here. I use this one here.
The center line of the boom?
Yeah, for the center line of the main boom.
Yeah.
This one is in just a little bit from that. Again, I moved that thing like a 32nd of an inch, and I got it closer to the corner, right? And so that's when you deal with the models, and this goes for all models, the amounts that you move things are fractional. They're really small, right? So the other thing that most guys do, I sail like he has it here now, but then Dennis Rogers, who is a past national champion and one of the fastest guys of our pond, you know, his goes all the way out and comes up all the way to the boom. So this bridle is generally a longer angle, so it meets the boom and the adjustment all, and it's back. The ring is back here, and that's to get the pivots and the swings right to help with that. Because this will tend to make the main go out a little bit further.
It also says get it as close to the ring as you can.
The boom,
Yeah.
as close to the ring as you can. Mine
That's
comes
too
right up.
tight.
Mine comes right up to here. Mine will come right up to the bottom of the barrel.
So the ring is basically over the screw.
Yes.
I don't know why I changed that,
This,
but I did.
and this string is missing.
Yes.
That string I learned in the Champion of Champions. That string actually means a lot. More so than what you think. It doesn't seem like it, but it does mean a lot. It does really help. So that string controls the depth of your ring going this way, which brings it back to here, and the bridles make sure that it's centered. So this is really the string that you use for the control of the ring, and then you just tighten the bridles accordingly to keep it centered.
I'll put that on.
Any questions from guys?
Your order of explanation, is that your routine each day when you're looking through your boat? Let's say you came to the inn and you adjusted your outhaul. Now what else should you think about that other you might make to other adjustments?
I actually don't check my outhauls that much, other than I look at them and go, yeah, they're okay. You know, I don't. I look at the main to be a little bit flatter. Those adjustments don't vary that much, and I don't change them that much. Now, other guys, maybe Chris Steiger changes them a lot. Maybe Larry Grant does. I don't. But then again, I'm also very beatable.
Unless
That's
the
your
wind is really high or really low, I never touch the outholes.
So that's your normal routine, just kind of how you went.
I
through
check the rake, right, and then I sheet it in, and I use the same as like Tom talked about. I lay it on a side stand, and then I start looking at everything else. But I check the rake first, and then I start looking at everything else to make sure that things haven't slipped.
And this is because you've already adjusted this to where you want it, and that's
Yeah, that never moves. This goes all the way. This goes all the way back. In most cases, I haven't seen it be up. It's a lot like a mast ram and an IOM. It controls the bend of the mast. If you want to bend your mast more, pull it forward. If you want to decrease the bend in your mast, push it aft. Now, where we've found that it works best is to be all the way aft, and then I use 1130 as the number for the rake.
that's one notch. That's on the first notch.
Yeah,
I don't
that-
think it wants to go back any further.
I think that's as far as it goes. I just push it all the way back and then tighten it.
You can go all the way back, but it's tricky getting the mast in, and what happens is it acts as a mast ramp, so it actually imposes forward bend of the mast.
Yeah.
Just
So,
how
I mean,
much backstage
you may
you
take
start
advantage
with?
of that, but that's what
I-
it's there for.
That's a great question. Did you guys all hear that question? It's about how much backstay do you use?
To start to get.
So
to your
once I get
limiter.
my forward 1130, I take and I put on enough backstay to just start to deflect the mast. So
And then measure again.
yes, this mast is pretty straight, but it has just ever so slight a deflection in it. If you can see that, just ever so slight a deflection in it. Now that's all the deflection I put in, especially in here and flat water and stuff like that. I have bent it more and I've bent it less. If you start getting like giant wrinkles out of here,
Yeah.
it means you got too much bend, right? So you can do two things. If your fitting is all the way back, right, then you have to adjust it with the backstay, headstay kind of thing. If it's forward at all, you can push it back and that'll take some of that bend out. That'll also tighten. So once again, with every action, if you were to move the mast ram around, you're going to change your vang setting because you're straightening and bending your mast. The more bent mast, the less vang tension you have. The straighter the mast, the greater the vang tension or the leech tension. So that requires an adjustment. When you change the bend in your mast, it requires an adjustment on the vang. Right? Okay. Any other questions?
I have just one thing when we were talking about adjustments that change that you have to be aware of. I think that the sheet lines are something that stretch, and those things need to be looked at on a regular basis. The jib and the main sheet will change, so I think that's a consideration.
They stretch and slip.
Yeah, and slip.
Those are, I glued those because of the slipping.
So, what he's talking about, and it's been a long time ago, a number of years ago, we were always having our sailing IOMs. We were always getting our sails would always change dimension. They would always change. They would never stay the same. You put the boat in the water, go race it, bring it back, wait for the next race, and everything's different. So I started running tests on Spectra, and I did it wet, I did it dry, I put it in the sun, I put it in the shade, I put it in indoors. Then I did all these things, and I got as much out of a 12-inch stretch of Spectra. I got as much of as an inch of movement. I called the cordage companies. They deal with Spectra. They designed, engineered. Oh no, it doesn't change. Doesn't change. No. It has an initial 2% stretch factor. 2%. 2% at 12 inches is like nothing, right? Now we're getting an inch of movement in a lot of the fishing line stuff. So yes, when it goes going back to your question, Lynn, where you said, what is my routine? I check my rake, I get my mast set, I turn around, and then I check my sheets. Because invariably, I'd adjusted them because they had stretched at the last event, and now they've shrunk, and they're too tight to start the event. But by the time I finish the event, and they're wet, and they're strained, and all that, they'll probably have changed, and then I'll have moved them in. But there again, those amounts that we move it are fractional. They're very small. And you have to be really careful about doing too much. Hi, John.
How's it going?
Hey, check in over here. You and Dennis both. There's a check-in sheet.
I got them, and I got
You got them?
I got both of them.
The part of that whole thing was that they come over and check it in.
Awesome, Jess.
So, all right, yes.
I wanted to say I'm gonna do a 11:30 on Wednesday. I'm gonna do a little strategies and tactics talk, a little